Welcome to the Week in Nintendo, GVG's Nintendo podcast. We got a lot of news to cover. Nintendo Switch 2 has been blowing up the internet in both good ways and in bad ways. We were gone for a lot of that, me and Steve, who's here with me today, because we were at the press event in New York playing the Switch 2 while the rest of you were watching the Direct and Treehouse. And that was an incredible experience, and we kind of wanted to get together and just reflect on that and talk to you guys about it. But before we get into that, Steve, how the heck are you?
I'm good, man. I am on cloud nine. So Switch 2 hype is in full effect for me. It is my current obsession. One of the things you mentioned was that we were in New York and we were playing the Switch 2 while all that Treehouse coverage was going on. So actually, I didn't get to watch the Treehouse stuff until yesterday, and I binged all of it, and I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Can we talk about how wild it is for Nintendo to be uploading 4K crispy footage?
Yeah, it's a new era, and I think it's going to be interesting for the broader implications of the YouTube landscape, because obviously we've been capturing 4K for quite some time here at GVG, like since the beginning. But that's not true for a lot of like Nintendo focused outlets because they don't need to, but we cover everything. So, PlayStation, Xbox, those are 4K videos on our page already. But it is weird to think that we're going to be uploading Nintendo content in 4K soon, because we'll actually be able to. It's wild to see just how good these games look. So obviously, at the press event in New York, you and I played on pretty small TVs, right? Like, because you're standing less than a foot away from them in most cases. So I finally got to see what, some of these games would look like on a 65-inch 4K OLED. And, oh, man, it's so good.
It is worth noting, too, that we got to watch the Direct at the same time as everybody else, but we had a pretty unique situation in which we got to do so. They put us in a room with all the other people from press. You and I were sitting next to Zion and Alana from Nintendo Life, and they had 3 massive, multi-panel screens, like the ones where you, put the individual screens together to make a big one. They had 3 of those. We were sitting in the center one. And when that Direct started and I saw, the level of quality, it was so sharp on a screen that big, it was kind of a magical experience.
Yeah, you don't really get to view Directs that way. So it was really cool to see a Direct on a Jumbotron, essentially, and to see how well the graphics hold up when blown up to that size.
Yeah, the games looked great.
Yeah, and that's something that I think people aren't really fully grasping, because it's hard to. We posted a clip on Bluesky of you and I completely losing our minds just seeing Breath of the Wild at 1080p 60 FPS. But it's really hard to understate just how impressive these games are in motion.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even holding the Switch. I was standing behind the camera over your shoulder while you played Breath of the Wild. And the moment you started moving around, it hit me. I was like, wow. The fact that I could see that much improvement via my limited viewing experience in that moment, it's very telling. The video footage on YouTube has been great since we can see 4K 60 FPS there as well, but there's nothing quite like seeing it in person.
Right. I think everybody who's played a Switch has had at least one moment where they've picked up a game and they've started it up and been like, how is this working? How does this happen? Right. Whether it's The Witcher 3 or Doom or, even Mario Kart or Super Mario Odyssey, there are moments in which that little console felt like it was punching super far above its weight. Like it's doing things that something its size shouldn't be able to do. And that feeling still persists, but over the last 8 years, it's been diminished, right? We know what the Switch 1 can do. The Switch 2 renews that feeling entirely. Seeing Breath of the Wild in 60 FPS without a hint of a stutter or hiccup, the same being true for Tears of the Kingdom.
In handheld mode.
In handheld mode. Yeah, it just blew me away. it was weird because obviously we'd seen the Direct, we expected it, but when you're actually holding that relatively tiny piece of hardware and seeing it happening in that context, it's so much more impressive.
Yeah, I don't think they told us the spec for Mario Kart in handheld mode, but I heard floating around that there was a 120 FPS mode for Mario Kart. I don't think it was there, but
interesting.
I did hear that it might exist.
I wouldn't be surprised. I was actually very surprised. So I've done Nintendo preview events or just preview events in general for a long time. I've been in this industry a while. I've worked here over a decade. And so I've been privy to a lot of events where I get to talk to developers and people. And I like to ask the questions that I know they can't answer, that I know they won't answer. Because you never know when you will get an answer. And when we were playing Mario Kart World, the person running the demo next to me just was chatting me up, which is a very common thing at a preview event. Usually you'll have a developer or a member of the team, like just talking you through it. Like, hey, what do you think? Like trying to get your feedback while you're playing. And to be clear, I don't think the person I was talking to was a member of the Mario Kart dev team, but they were somebody working the event. And we had just seen the Direct where they talked about frame rates and resolution. So I looked at her and I asked her, I was like, can you tell me like what resolution Mario Kart World is playing at right now? Like this demo that we're playing, the very first one we did that was in docked mode. And surprisingly, she had an answer. She was like, oh, that's 1440p. You're playing in 1440p, 60 FPS. And I was like, what's going on here that Nintendo is willing to talk about resolutions? But also more impressively, it looked amazing. I mean,
it really does.
I really need to emphasize how close we were to those displays. Like we are not at the optimum viewing angle, for playing games generally. And it still looked tack sharp, like right up close.
It's so impressive. Like, other consoles have been doing this for years, right? But there's something about Nintendo being able to do it now that is more exciting to me than the other platforms that have been doing it already.
I'm glad you said that because I remember getting my Wii U back in 2012, 2013 and taking it home. And though I had already had a PS3 and a 360 and I had played those in HD, there was something about Nintendo doing it that I was like, look at me, I'm playing Nintendo games on an HD television. And of course, we've had the better part of a decade of 4K from Nintendo's competitors, from Microsoft and Sony. And of course, on PC, where 4K has been a thing even longer. And there's just something special about Nintendo doing it, about seeing games like Mario Kart and Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in 4K. Metroid Prime, which to be fair, we didn't see in 4K, but we know will be because Nintendo told us. There's something just kind of like Nintendo's growing up, and it feels like a special moment.
I think too, something that maybe not a lot of people think about is Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, those first party experiences. Nintendo still is targeting frame rate first. So, we're still getting higher resolutions, but still frame rate is king. But they're still delivering 2K experiences with 1440p that look incredible. But other platforms, they don't tend to do that. They just kind of push resolution as far as it can go and then kind of figure out where frame rate lands after that and then, develop modes based on that information. But there's something about Nintendo, like they lock it in and make sure that it's as good as possible on both counts.
Nintendo has done something really interesting this generation, and I feel like this is kind of the first time in a long time that Nintendo has pushed the envelope in a very obvious technological sense. So, the Switch is a feat of engineering. The fact that it can run the games it runs at all is impressive. The Switch 2 feels like Nintendo is taking aim at the idea of the traditional console. It feels like they are showing Sony and Microsoft that like, hey, we can't quite get to where you're at with that gigantic console you've got, but we are scary close. with a portable. You've got a variable refresh rate and 120 hertz in the built-in display.
And
not to say
HDR.
anything of HDR. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild to me. And that's going to go a long way toward getting games into that window where they feel like 60 FPS. If you don't own a VRR enabled display, 40 frames per second can look and feel like 60 FPS with a VRR display. As long as you're within that 40 to 45 FPS window, it's going to be hard to distinguish the difference. And that is really, really cool. Like, it feels like Nintendo heard pretty much all of their fans. You want a new iteration of the Switch? Cool, you got it. You want something that pushes the envelope technologically? Yeah, we're also going to do that, because we played a lot of games. We played games that, to me, I didn't think they'd look very good on the Switch 2. Street Fighter 6 looked and ran beautifully. Cyberpunk, it was a very early build. The fact that it was even there was nuts. And the fact that it was playable, and again, they said represented only 7 weeks of work. I was blown away by what I saw.
Yeah, we walked behind that mature section, right? They had them siloed off in their own area. Because where we played in New York, is where the public events were also going to be. So it makes sense for them to have mature cut off somewhere else so that kids don't accidentally just see blood and guts and gore in Cyberpunk. But yeah, Cyberpunk was a game that you were more confident on than I was, just being on Switch 2 at all. Because it doesn't run exceptionally well on Steam Deck. At least it didn't at launch. I think it has a specific mode for Steam Deck now. But I think it was comparable to the PS4 experience of that game, in its finished state. And like you said, it's only 7 weeks. Only 7 weeks of development in the build that was there. I don't understand how this is happening.
Yeah, it's one of those games that when I predicted it, obviously, and to be clear, because it was a weird prediction I got right, I didn't know anything. It was just a complete guess, and I was so happy that I was right, because I love Cyberpunk. I was super excited to see it on the Switch 2. But it felt like the reason I predicted it was because that would be a technological statement. We can run this. Cyberpunk is this generation's crisis. Can it run Cyberpunk? And the Switch 2 answer for that is a resounding yes. Yes, it can. And it actually looks pretty darn good when you're playing it in motion. Are there obvious trade-offs to get something like that on Switch 2? Yeah. But I mean, I was never going to expect it to look as good as the PS5 version or the version, it's not going to look as good as it would on a dedicated desktop GPU. The fact that it's there at all, though, is wildly impressive to me. And the fact that what we saw was probably about as early of a build as you could get to make a demo out of was encouraging, because they say that this is going to ship day and date.
And they told you firsthand that the build that they have running at their offices is already significantly better than the one we got to see. Yeah.
I got to speak to the head of CDPR, their global PR manager, and he told me directly, the internal build that they have is far ahead of what they were showing. And so I expect this game, it's not going to be 4K 60 FPS, not even close. If I were to guess, they said they were targeting a performance mode at 40 FPS and a quality mode at about 25 FPS. And
and that 40 FPS mode is going to be a showpiece for, variable refresh rate.
Right.
That's what it's meant for.
Yeah. And as somebody who plays Cyberpunk on other platforms, I view this more as a companion piece, right? I have played through the whole game multiple times. I'm likely to play through it again for Switch 2, but I would port my cloud save over. Because if you don't know, CD Projekt Red has their own cloud save system, and they confirmed to me at the event that, yes, the Switch 2 version will support that. So if you have a save on PS5, PC, Xbox, literally any other platform. You can upload it to CDPR's cloud save system and pull it down on Switch 2 and keep playing it there. And I just want every game to do that. Like, I want every game to be able to do that. Capcom also confirmed to me that Street Fighter 6 would have crossplay, so you can play against PC or PS5 players or Xbox players. What they couldn't confirm for me at the time was whether or not you'd have cross progression, like if you'd be able to take your World Tour character and bring them over from a different platform. They said they didn't have news on that yet. I hope so, though.
I was really impressed with Nintendo over this entire like event structure, for press specifically. You know, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but one thing that still stands out to me even now is that we never had to wait once to play anything.
Yeah, it was a pretty impressive setup. So, I'm ancient, so I got to do the Switch 1 press event as well. And I will say that Nintendo was similarly organized back in the day with the Switch 1, right? Like when we did the press event for that, you could pretty much walk up to any demo station, play, and then go to the next one. There were a few that were more crowded. I think Snipper Clips and 1-2-Switch were pretty hard to get into, just because they had like one demo station for those. Whereas at this event, every game had multiple kiosks. Every single game. Metroid Prime 4 had a ton of them.
Donkey Kong had like 2 rooms of them.
Yeah, Donkey Kong was clearly the game, like, next to Mario Kart, that was the biggest game Nintendo wanted to show. Because Mario Kart had an entire floor of the event dedicated to just it. And then when you got up to the larger, broader demo area, there was a second Mario Kart area. So they had 2 different demos. We played Knockout Tour, and then we just did like a Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Right. So it was cool to get that hands-on experience with Mario Kart. But Donkey Kong, like, as you were on your way through towards the exit, it was just rows and rows of Donkey Kong. And that was a game that I couldn't get enough of. I am very excited to play this, and I'm very happy to know that it's just a month after launch.
I think Donkey Kong was the only like first party thing there that wasn't like perfect in its performance. And it's hard to say if that's reflective of the final version of the game, considering it's so close. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the means, or stretch of the word. Let me clarify. But it was it was a first party game that was experiencing some frame rate drops.
Yeah. So in Donkey Kong, whenever you were just smashing through things, there were some very obvious frame drops during that. I would liken it to a less harsh version of using like Ultra Hand in Tears of the Kingdom, where the act of engaging in this activity caused frame drops. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show that I went back and I watched the Treehouse footage of everything, and I specifically wanted to see Donkey Kong because the build the Treehouse plays is likely different to the one that they're letting us demo.
Yeah.
And while Nintendo is very cagey, like, they're not going to tell you how much dev time went into anything. They're not going to tell you what build of a demo you're running on. Most developers are a lot more secretive about information like that. You can pretty much count on the fact that this is not representative of their current progress on the game, because in game dev, usually when you know that you have to do a demo, you freeze development at the time that the demo's ordered, and then a smaller team splinters off and starts creating that demo based on wherever they were at when Nintendo was like, we need a demo. And then the main team continues on with whatever they need to do to get the game ready for release. So this was probably a snapshot from, I mean, it could even be months ago. And Treehouse was playing something that was likely a bit further along in development than what we got our hands on, even though it was seemingly the same. But I didn't notice frame drops as severe in the Treehouse footage. In fact, I was looking for them and it looked pretty smooth.
I also watched it, and I'll need to watch it again. I guess I wasn't looking for it in the moment because I was just awing at the crispy crispy footage. I don't know what resolution Donkey Kong was. Was it 1440p or is it 1080?
They did not confirm to me. In fact, I didn't even get to ask now that I think about it. So I'm not 100% sure on that one. It didn't look 1080p to me though. Like to my eye when I was playing it, it looked higher than 1080p. But if I had to guess, I would say likely 1440, just because if it was having those type of frame issues, I can't imagine that it was pushing 4K as well.
Yeah. The game did look good. So I don't really have any concerns visually. I just wasn't sure if we knew exactly where it came in at, because there were some games I was playing where I was like, I can't even tell if this is 1080p. And I don't know if it's because some of those monitors just weren't calibrated very well. I can tell you for sure that HDR on some of those monitors was not set properly.
Yeah.
Because there was an HDR demo in Welcome Tour, and I was like struggling to see the difference because I don't think either the peak brightness on those monitors was too low, or they just weren't calibrated before the event.
It's a little difficult to say because usually with events like that, you know, Nintendo just orders some vendor in the local area
Right.
to bring displays, which is how you wound up with that kind of meme of like the tiny Super Mario Galaxy image at the entrance that people were sharing.
Why was it there?
that was a very weird thing to just be on the display. Like Nintendo maybe didn't want to provide an image ahead of embargo to whoever set up the TVs.
It also wasn't like an actual image from Super Mario Galaxy. It was like a rendering of it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure somebody just Googled Mario and found a picture and they're like, yeah, that one. And then they put it on, they're like, it's tiny and in the middle of the screen. But if I had to guess, it probably was something, you know, Nintendo is, you don't need to be in the media to know that Nintendo is very close to the vest with images, assets, information.
Yeah.
And the type of people, you know, it's not like Nintendo descends on a venue and then it's only Nintendo people setting it up. Like Nintendo, like any other company, hires people to set up a venue for them and then says, here's signs and stuff we need you to put up. It's not like Bill Trinan is in there, you know, hanging up Switch 2 signs. But yeah, I think I lost my train of thought, honestly. I started thinking about Bill Trinan.
There was one of the demos that I was not sure of the like video output was Kirby in the Forgotten Land. The demo I was playing on, it just didn't look very sharp. Like it was 60 FPS. That much was very clear to me. But then I watched the Treehouse footage and they're like, yeah, this is 1440p 60 FPS and it looked beautiful. And I'm like, what was wrong with my TV?
Yeah, event TVs can be pretty rough. I think it's just kind of luck of the draw. I was thinking about that when we were at the event. I was like, wow, Nintendo now has to source 4K TVs for all these events. Like that's a difference for them. But I would say historically at events I've gone to, just very broadly speaking, it's always a crapshoot with what TV you're going to play on. And it will never be as nice as whatever you have at home. No matter what you have at home, TVs at an event are going to be worse because they're not going to be calibrated, obviously, to your specific, you know, desires to view. A lot of the people who set these up might not know the importance of HDR or might not understand the intricacies of this stuff. And you get you can play two demos side by side and one TV will look way better than the next.
Yeah, so it's a shame. I would have liked to have seen all the games looking their best. And it's not really any fault of Nintendo's. And I would argue it's not even really the fault of the vendors. There's got to be a line of communication there that assures that all of those things are set up properly. But, I mean, by and large, I think most of them did look good and were correct. But even Zelda was like, is this 1080p? Or is it 4K? I couldn't tell.
See, for me with Zelda felt clear as day that it was a 4K demo. Like just seeing, and maybe it's just because I play Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom at least once a month. Like I start those games up and just kind of, you know, run around Hyrule cutting things every so often. And so when I saw those games, I was like, oh, this is nuts. Like this looks so much more clear than any representation of these games I've ever seen. Those two demos, while I think the HDR was not calibrated super great, visually I could tell that these were 4K games. Like, they looked amazing.
HDR looked real good on the handheld at the very least.
Yeah, in handheld mode, woof, they look just incredible. It's such a vibrant display that I honestly did not care that it wasn't an OLED panel.
Oh, I didn't either. That said, if and when they do an OLED version of the platform, dang, it's gonna look good.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, taking it back to hardware for a sec. It's funny how much more premium the Switch 2 feels than I anticipated. It feels to me, I'm gonna date myself here, but it feels to me like going from the iPhone 3G to the iPhone 4. Like, just in terms of like the refinement of design and how much more solid this thing feels than what we currently have. I remember seeing Apple, go from this little chunky plastic fun box to metal and glass, and the design language that has dominated the iPhone industry or the smartphone industry for the next 15 years, unfortunately. But just seeing the Switch 2, I was like, this feels like such a grown-up device. Like, you've got these really satisfying, strong magnetic Joy-Con that just slap onto the console, like, that you can't pull off. Like, you would have to get violent with this thing to remove them in an unintended way.
In a way that Nintendo could clearly tell you it's your fault if you break it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I said this in our preview, but if you didn't catch our preview of the Switch 2, one of the most telling moments for me in relation to Nintendo's confidence about the hardware was that before we got to go in and see even the Direct, before we had seen anything, I was chatting to a person from Nintendo of America's marketing team, and I wanted to ask them about the hardware. And the question that I asked was, has anybody at Nintendo dangled it? Has anybody just grabbed it by a Joy-Con? Does the Joy-Con pop off? And her response to me was just, try it. And I was like, oh, dang. Like, this isn't going to come off. Like, that I'm not going to harm this in any way. And she's like, yeah, you're going to get a chance to hold it. Just try it. And I was like, the amount of confidence in their voice when they said that, I was like, oh, they know how this is going to play out already. And this is something that has been asked of them many times. And so, and sure enough, when we got there, you can see it in our video. I'm holding it by a single Joy-Con vertically to try to get it to separate. And I cannot emphasize enough that there wasn't even a hint of separate. Like, I would never do that with the current model of the Switch, because I would be worried about a connector snapping. I would definitely feel the Joy-Con starting to pull away. You can jiggle your Joy-Con on the Switch 1. There's no play in the connection on the Switch 2.
Yeah, it's rock solid. There's no give at all. It's kind of insane. And to speak nothing of the Joy-Cons themselves, they're so much bigger. The joysticks are bigger. Everything's bigger on Switch 2, right? But I kind of hate the Joy-Cons on Switch 1. I don't like using them unless it's like a motion control game or like Skyward Sword HD. I don't like using them on their sides because they're just really tiny. The SL and SR buttons are hard to press unless you're using the grip. And even then, it doesn't feel very good. These Joy-Cons, I'm looking at that Joy-Con grip and I'm like, yeah, I'd do that. I'd use it.
Yeah, it's truly nice. It feels very premium. I like that they included the GL and GR buttons that are on the Pro controller on the back side of the Joy-Con grip.
Only the charging grip, I've come to find out.
Yes, it's only the charging grip, not the one that is included in the box with the Switch, too. So you have to buy that separately, which honestly I will be buying because I didn't think I would be, but I think I'll be using the Joy-Con a lot. Also, unlike the current Switch, because of mouse mode, I'm very unlikely to just have the Joy-Con attached to the Switch all the time while the Switch is in the dock, because I imagine that I'll want to, play mouse mode games quite a bit. And we haven't even really talked about mouse mode too much. I know we talked about it a lot in the preview, but it's really hard to understate just how good that feels.
Yeah, we've got some questions in here from our mailbag, so I'll just pop one out here. One from Fia. I hope I'm saying that right. Having tried the Switch 2 mouse mode, do you see yourself using it on a desk, on dedicated mouse mats, or on pants, or on dedicated pants?
So,
to quickly answer, I am probably going to. I have like this, like art, like folder. It's like this big cardboard art folder thing, right? That keeps your paintings or whatever nice and flat, so they don't crease or whatever. And it fits really nicely on my lap. I use it on my lap when I'm typing, if I'm in my living room, or if I just want some extra support under my arms when I'm playing a game. I'm absolutely going to use mouse mode on that thing on my couch, lazily as possible.
Nice. So, my answer to that is one. We might have a piece of merch coming out for this purpose, so stay tuned. I might have been working on something for like the last, I don't know, maybe like 4 months that might address this need to a degree. That I'm very excited to show off when I can. The other piece to this though is so I have been already shopping for some kind of, I have a pit sofa. And if you don't know what a pit sofa is, it's like just a giant couch. Like it's like 6 feet deep. Like it's meant to be just a giant, like everyone gathers in this one area. And so I like to play my games that I capture for GVG there. I have a dedicated setup to capture footage and all of that good stuff. But it's too deep to like sit on the edge of and have anything. So I'm looking for like a couch cushion kind of console thing where I can have something that just rests in between the cushions of the couch and provides me a surface to mouse on. That's probably what I'm going to do. I just need to, such things exist. I just haven't found one that I love yet, but I have 2 months to find it. So I will.
Also during the developer roundtable, they said that like their staff overwhelmingly preferred to use it on their legs. We weren't really afforded that opportunity because our Joy-Cons were tethered. So it's really hard to say. I don't, just like gut reaction, that doesn't feel comfortable to me. I also like to lounge, right? I don't want to sit down, in a proper seated position. I want to kick back, right? So I'm not so sure that's going to be for me, but I will try it because I am curious.
Yeah, it's something I'll give a shot, but I'm with you. I don't think it's a natural position for me anyway.
Just to bounce off this question, GBASP Gamer asks, does using the Joy-Con as a mouse feel comfortable? And there have been a variety of opinions I've seen online, a lot more mixed than I was expecting, because I found it pretty dang comfortable myself. What did you think?
Delightful. So Metroid Prime was the vehicle that I wanted this for. I said as much multiple times in the lead up to the Switch 2 premiere that was the game I wanted to see have mouse control, and I did not come away disappointed. When I played it in mouse mode, I was like, I never want to play this any other way. I just can't imagine playing it any differently than mouse. Nintendo knows they have a winner there with the mouse mode on Metroid Prime. And just the precision of aiming, it goes exactly where I want it to go. I suddenly feel like my game has leveled up 10 times over. I'm whipping around the area, finding enemies, blasting, moving, turning. This I want this for every shooter forever.
I think my only frustration, I talked about this in the hardware preview a little bit, is that finding the right grip to be able to press the face buttons in a comfortable way was a little difficult for me at first. I did find a couple grips that I liked, but because of the face button layout, I found I had to change between them a couple times in order to do what I wanted to do. In the case of Metroid Prime, I would have preferred if some of the actions that were on the right Joy-Con could be put on the left one. We do know that there's like remapping and there's other functions for changing that in the game itself. I don't know to what degree, so they might have already solved this problem for me specifically. But yeah, I was a little frustrated there. I think that's really my only problem. I'm also a little, I guess, surprised that they didn't offer some kind of accessory to contour to your hand a little bit better. I guess they're going to just rely on third parties to figure that out.
I'm not surprised by that. And the reason why is that I think Nintendo is trying to, I think the Wii U taught Nintendo some valuable lessons in how to message to their customer base. And one of the things is that I think they want to be very clear that the Joy-Con is a mouse, that it by itself is a mouse, and they don't want to muddy the imaging like, oh, I have to buy a mouse for a computer for this thing. That's confusing. Like they want to show it off like as is. And I think you're right that they're going to just kind of lean on third parties. Like, hey, if you want to make a ergonomic mouse version of this, we won't stop you. Just slot your Joy-Con into that thing. It attaches magnetically. And then you've got something that's a bit more comfortable, because I could agree with you that I think for a lot of people, using the Joy-Con as a mouse for an extended period could probably cause them some discomfort. I didn't experience it, but I also played for 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, what it'll be like, because
we were also standing for that one.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of variables there. Like we were standing, we were, I don't know a whole lot of people who play a game like that completely stood up.
Without some kind of arm support, right? Like the height is tuned to them specifically in those cases.
I'm an old man now, and so I honestly game with like a gaming pillow so that I can rest my arms on it while I play, because I can't believe I'm going to say this publicly on the internet, but I got tennis elbow from playing video games, because I'm a leany guy. So like I like to lean on an elbow while I play, and I'm getting old. That hurt after a while. So I had to find a way to break myself of the habit. So now I just have like a little pillow that rests in my lap and my arms sit on, and it's changed everything. I'm so much more comfortable. But so I don't know. Mouse mode is one of those things that I will have to consider how I play at home and what would best suit me for that purpose. But I'm thinking like just a little like table next to me, because obviously you and I, we put videos together, we edit stuff, and that's a lot of using a mouse. So obviously I know I can do it. Yeah. People have very different needs, ergonomically speaking. So I think third parties will do this. I think Nintendo just wanted to show that, Nintendo, especially NOA, is historically concerned with confusing their customers. It's why the new 3DS was such a weird launch here in the States. Like we got the XL, and then for the longest we didn't get the regular size version until they did like a special edition. So I think it's just they didn't want to muddy the messaging here. They know that third parties will be like, hey, we know this is going to hurt your hand after a while, so here's a bigger thing that you put the Joy-Con into, and you can buy that if you're that concerned.
Yeah, overall, I think mouse mode is going to be a great feature. Sometimes I play games here at my desk, on Switch, for like recording and whatnot. Here at my desk with my nice mouse pad or my mouse mat, desk mat, whatever you want to call it, like I could see that being really comfy.
It will be. I mean, we played on desk mats. I thought that was such a funny thing that almost every demo station we went to had a desk mat at it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense, but they were just gray.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think mouse mode's going to be interesting. You know what we haven't talked about at all, at least you and I haven't, is Nintendo's pricing and pre-order structure for all this stuff, because we didn't know it when we did the preview.
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about this whole thing. And then we have the tariff situation, which has thrown all of it into like a state of utter chaos. I think $450 for the console is more aggressive than I would have liked, but I don't think it's an unreasonable ask.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you ask anybody, they would have preferred a $399 price point, right?
Yeah.
I think that is not unreasonable as a desire. I certainly would have hoped that it could have gone even lower, right? $299 would have been an amazing price point. But when I
They'd be
look at
taking over the industry if it was $299.
if it was $299, yeah, shut it down. Nintendo would have this generation completely on lockdown. But I do have to say that when I predicted those prices, I also did not expect the Switch 2 to be as capable as it has turned out to be.
Me too.
There is a lot of horsepower in this machine, and
I think, just to put it into perspective, the last few console generations in a row for Nintendo, those upgrades didn't feel like super meaningful. GameCube to Wii was obviously like, it felt like nothing almost. Because it kind of was. Wii to Wii U, we finally got HD, but most games were 720p. A couple hit 60 FPS, a lot of them didn't. Switch just felt like a more capable Wii U to me in general. Switch to Switch 2 feels like an upgrade, a substantial upgrade.
Yeah, I would say that Switch to Switch 2 feels like the most substantial generational leap Nintendo has had in quite some time.
Maybe since N64 to GameCube.
Yeah, I think that it is the first one in a long time. I would say that Wii to Wii U, at least from a visual fidelity standpoint, did feel like a massive upgrade. Because you went from 480p to 720p, and that is a pretty noticeable jump in quality. Yeah. You finally had HD games, but I would say this is the closest Nintendo has come to parity with their competitors since the GameCube. GameCube was derided for a number of reasons, but technologically speaking, from a horsepower perspective, it was closer to the Xbox than it was the PS2. Like it was, Xbox had an edge over it, but Xbox was also like 3 times the size. Whereas with this, we switched to Switch 2. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You look at Switch 1 and you play Breath of the Wild and you go to the Korok Forest and you see that thing drop to 15 FPS easy. You watch it just slow down, and that is at 720p handheld, 1080p docked, right?
Yeah.
And then you play that same game on
it was
Switch 2.
900p docked, wasn't it?
Right, you're right. It was sub 1080p. And the point is, you see it struggle at that. And then you put that same game on Switch 2 and you see this thing at 1080p docked, so 1080p handheld, better than the docked resolution of Switch at 60 FPS, literally quadruple the frame rate. And then you dock it and it goes all the way up to 4K. And I remember, even
real quick,
I
want to say it's 1440p for Zelda.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Oh, either way, I mean, if it's 1440p, it's still a massive upgrade.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, even if it's running at 1440p or 4K or whatever, right?
That's still a substantial leap.
It's a massive improvement. You're talking about, even if it ran at the same resolution as the Switch, quadrupling the frame rate is no mean feat. Like it's impressive to eliminate, seemingly all of the frame rate hiccups and hitches that we saw in first party games. Like everything we played, with the exception of Donkey Kong Bonanza, I always want to call it Jamboree, was running at a locked frame rate. Like everything had just a perfectly smooth 60 FPS or higher in the case of Metroid Prime 4 presentation. Metroid Prime 4 was 1080p, but it was running at 120 FPS. Like that is absurd.
I only saw one frame rate thing with Tears of the Kingdom. And for whatever reason, it seems to only happen in the depths. Like if you're using a complicated structure that you make with Zonai equipment or whatever, the frame rate drops to locked 30.
Oh, that's weird.
But I only saw it happen in the depths. So I don't know if it was just a result of whatever weirdo structure that they put together or if it's designed that way. regardless, I don't really care that much because like it's 60 FPS the rest of the time, so it's whatever.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me, but I mean, going back to the price to performance discussion,
Yeah.
Nintendo has, I mean, 450 does feel high. It does feel high, and I think it's because people didn't expect it, right? Like the vast majority of people expected a $399 price point. But when I look at what Nintendo has pulled off, when I look at the hardware and I see that not only did we get, this level of performance, right? We're running games like Cyberpunk on this thing now, but we also have a 120 hertz HDR VRR capable display built into the handheld. We have these really premium feel magnetic Joy-Con, a really solid and adjustable stand. Like these are all things that make the device feel like it's justified in being $50 north of where most people expected it. Like Nintendo built this to look, feel, and perform like a premium handheld. And I can't be mad at that. When I look at the PS5, right? $499 for that, $599 if you get the disk drive version, and then $699 if you get the Pro, right? I think that the pricing is at least in line with where the market is currently for consoles. Everything else is a bit higher than this, and I think nobody would be mad if they had to pay less for it. But I also think after having played the hardware, seen the games, seen how everything is running, it adds up for me. The maths.
Yeah, I think they pushed the price reasonably as far as it could go before it was just downright outrageous. Like you look at the Steam Deck, and in a lot of respects, the Switch 2 looks to outperform it, at least docked. Handheld might be a different story, but that comes in at like $400 in its lowest SKU, doesn't it?
I think the lowest SKU for the Steam Deck these days might be $300. I could be misquoting that, but I think they might have one pretty low now, but it's like the one that nobody gets, Let me see if I can find Steam Deck pricing, because I feel like I could be telling a lie.
The entry-level 256 model with an LCD is $400.
$400. Okay, so yeah, when you look at that, $400.
It's smaller. It has a 7-inch display, 800p, 60 hertz refresh rate, Wi-Fi 5. The Switch 2 is Wi-Fi 6. Does have more battery life, and it draws a little bit more power, so it'll get a little bit more performance out of less. But I don't know. That's pretty comparable, I think.
Yeah, it's priced reasonably with what it's competing against, and I think that the Steam Deck at $399, you also have to really include the fact that the Steam Deck doesn't have any type of DLSS or upscaling built into it. Mm-hmm. So you do not have the capability to kind of punch above your weight, right? You don't have, the ability to really bump up the resolution of those games to make them look better, or just use DLSS to get higher frame rates at the same resolution. It's just so Switch 2, probably raw horsepower speaking, DLSS not included, is more powerful than the Steam Deck, but then you have the extra layer of DLSS on top of that to make that difference up. So I don't know. I think that we're going to see something. I came away very impressed. The way Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom ran reminded me of all of these people who have emulated the game and put, run them through 4K packs and all this other stuff. Like it looks like it shouldn't be possible on something that you hold in your hands. And I'm just super impressed with it. I cannot wait to get my hands on this thing.
There is another element of this that we definitely need to talk about, and that's the game pricing, because they have really muddied the waters with this one, in my opinion.
Nintendo's messaging here is bad.
It's really bad. First of all, Mario Kart World being an $80 game, I think is a huge miss. You are pushing the envelope too far, in my opinion.
On one hand, I understand the rationale. I don't think it was the right move.
I understand the rationale too. I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, I think that it's very telling that you can buy the console with Mario Kart, and when you do that, Mario Kart is $50. And I have
criticisms of that SKU too, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, I honestly think that is part of the reason that Mario Kart is $80. And I know that
to push you to the bundle.
To push you to the bundle, because no one is going to look at the marquee launch title for the Switch and say, I'd rather get the box without the sticker and then pay 30 extra bucks to get the game separately. I don't see that happening for literally anyone, any place, anywhere. I think everyone is going to look at the Switch to Mario Kart bundle and say, wait, I get the $80 game for $50. Sign me up. Because even if for whatever reason you just hate Mario Kart but want to Switch to, you're going to throw that copy of the game on eBay for $70, and make 20 back or something.
It's not a physical copy though, is it?
I'm not. This is again where the messaging gets really confusing. I had seen a post on Twitter last night where someone said that it was a physical copy, and I've seen other people say it's digital. Now, I firmly believe here in the US it's digital.
It is a full game download according to Nintendo.com.
What I had seen, somebody posted that the UK version had a physical inside. And I could be right, could be wrong. I don't know. I can't imagine Nintendo packing in a game card. But either way, you could sell a download code. If it's not preloaded onto the system,
I guess that's true. Yeah.
Pop the download code up on eBay.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I still think $80 is a big ask. We do have the Mario Kart Direct in 5 days, and there's a lot of people, myself included, who think there's a big feature that they haven't revealed yet. I think it's a single player adventure mode. I've even floated the idea of drawing your own track designs in the open world to play with other people. I think there's something big that they have not open the lid on yet.
I agree with that. When we played, we were limited to strictly 2 modes, didn't get to explore menus, didn't get to go through anything. So there's something in there, I think, that Nintendo is not ready to talk about yet. We'll know in a week. Like we're recording, 5 days. We're recording this 5 days out from the Direct. And so we'll know very soon what the secret sauce to Mario Kart world is.
Whether or not that justifies $80 to me remains to be seen. In the end, I still don't think it will, just because that frustrates me. Like, I can get over a big price tag on a console because that's your barrier to entry, but you overcome that and then you can just buy some games, right? Well, but when games are $80 a piece, and we know that it's not going to be true of all games, like Donkey Kong is $70, which I think is fine. It's just, I don't know. Nintendo has always been like a more budget-friendly competitor in this space, and it really, really drives a wedge to see this happening. For me.
I'm of 2 minds on this. As a consumer, I don't love it, and I want to be very clear about that. Like, I don't like $80 games. That sucks. On the other hand, though, and this is just somebody's going to call me a bootlicker in the comments. I'm ready for it. But this industry is bad. Like it's bad. The situation this industry finds itself in is bad. And people lose their jobs constantly, and it's because the people at the top don't agree with the performance or the sales or the money or whatever, right? Any number of reasons. And on some level, I appreciate Nintendo being honest about, 4K games are harder. They require more people, more hours, more effort. And this game in particular is bigger than our other ones, and we had to put more time and money and effort into making it, so it costs more. And I think that that's something that, while I don't love eating the cost as the consumer, I at least appreciate the transparency and the honesty there. Like, hey, this took us. They started it with Tears of the Kingdom, right? Tears of the Kingdom, $70 Switch 1 game.
Mhm.
And they're like, this took us more than usual, like in terms of our development time and effort. And it's going to cost more than usual because we poured a lot into it. And I was fine with that. And I think for that reason, I'm not as bothered as some are with this. Like, I don't like it, but
we've
at
seen
least understand
evidence of like the lower end of variable pricing in Switch 2's or Switch 1's life, like Mario versus Donkey Kong, WarioWare. I think both those games were like $50.
Yep.
But on the other hand, you have something like Donkey Kong Country Returns HD being $60. Like, if this is the route you're going, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that Nintendo needs to appropriately price things that are like remakes and remasters much lower, right? Like, I hope that in this generation, if they're starting to charge $80 for a game like a Mario Kart World, which is wild to me that Mario Kart World is the game that costs $80 and not Donkey Kong. Like, I figured Donkey Kong being like a whole new marquee 3D Mario game would be the game that Nintendo would charge a premium for over something like Mario Kart. But I think, unfortunately, Nintendo knows how much Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold. And
Yeah.
I figure they're like, this is the game that if we, we can get that 10 extra bucks from everyone, we're going to do way better than Donkey Kong, which likely, despite being super cool, will not sell as well as Mario Kart.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I struggle with some other elements as well, particularly Breath of the Wild. The Switch 2 version of that game is $70, I think. And
Yes.
the thing that drove me absolutely nuts is I found this out yesterday thanks to Arlo. It doesn't come with the DLC.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But is the DLC for Breath of the Wild not free with NSO?
It's not.
It's not. Oh, okay then.
It's $20.
There's no precedent for Nintendo doing that for bundling DLC with a re-release of a game, but also there's very little precedent for Nintendo releasing like a.
Well, they have done it before. Like New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe came with the Luigi.
You're right.
Stuff.
You're right. It did. It did.
I can understand, like, you have the base game price, the $60 for the Switch 1 version, the extra $10 for the Switch 2 version, and then the $20 for the DLC. But I feel like if you're buying a physical copy of Breath of the Wild Switch 2 edition,
it should come with the DLC.
It should come with the DLC. Exactly.
I agree if you're buying the physical, because then you're spending $70 no matter what. Mm-hmm. You're getting the 70, you're going out of pocket the 70 full dollars for it, because realistically, I think the vast majority of people who are going to buy a Switch 2 on day one, minute one, have Breath of the Wild. They bought that years ago. And so they have it either on their physical Switch 1 card, or they have a digital copy from the eShop, which will carry over. And then let's just assume they don't have NSO, right? They're going to pay $10 to get the Switch 2 premium version. There's a good chance that a lot of those people have the DLC, that they bought it sometime over the last 8 years. I did. I bought it so long ago, I forgot that it wasn't free with NSO. For some reason, I convinced myself it was. But they bought the DLC, and I think Nintendo probably has some numbers that just whatever math they do. Some accountant somewhere was like, yeah, it'll only affect X number of people or X percentage of people, or those who are coming brand new. I think if you're coming brand new to the platform and you want to play Breath of the Wild and you decide to go physical, it does really suck that Nintendo didn't put, because the DLC for Breath of the Wild, let's be real, it's okay. Like it's okay.
It's got some quality of life stuff, a little bit of a story in that second one. I like the Master Trials, but this isn't substantial, really.
No, it's not substantial. You know, the master cycle is a novelty at best, right?
Yeah.
So do I think I'm with you in that I don't agree that if you're dropping the full $70 to get the Switch 2 edition physical, it should have come with the DLC. It absolutely. I think if you're upgrading from digital and you just never bought the DLC when you had it on Switch 1, I'm like, I don't know. I don't necessarily feel that bad that you know, if you want to play it 8 years after the fact that you played it on Switch 1, I'm like, yeah, you could still buy it. Like, you'd be required to buy it with your Switch 1 copy anyway.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think $70 should net you the DLC if you're going that route.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. Some of the, I mean, you also do get both Zelda upgrades if you're, what is it, expansion pack?
Yes, if you have NSO expansion pack, you just get the Switch 2 upgrades for free, which I'm all for.
Yeah, me too. Being in the position I'm in, like, you know, having both games and have played them already, that's great. I look forward to getting my Switch 2 on launch day and having Mario Kart and 2 upgraded versions of 2 of my favorite games of all time. Like, that's awesome.
Honestly, I really hope, and I understand why for some games they haven't done this. This is the other thing that really I think Nintendo could have done better and is confusing about the messaging. I wish that they would include things like the Jamboree plus Jamboree TV as part of NSO. I understand why they don't, because it's a DLC, you know, on top of that.
Right.
But it really muddies the waters with the Switch 2 edition messaging. Like, hey, we've got some that are going to be free. And, well, we've got some that are not Switch 2 editions that will have better performance, and we won't charge you for those. And then we have some that rise to the level of being a Switch 2 edition, but they cost $10, and some of them are free on NSO, but not all of them. And then we have ones that we decided to bundle with a DLC that cost $20. And to me, that is, you're going to lose a lot of consumers in that conversion, because people are going to be like, well, what is the upgrade? Is there an upgrade? Is it $10? Is it $20? Do I have to go to the store and buy the $70 boxed edition? Like, I think people who are not you and me, you know, or are not watching or listening to this podcast are going to be lost in the details a bit, because they're going to be like, I don't know how to get my kids' game onto Switch 2 with all the cool bells and whistles. I don't know if I have it. And they're going to get, you know, a big thing that consumers do, casual consumers do when they're frustrated, is give up.
I made a video about Switch 2 branding and how Nintendo had a difficult problem ahead, and a bunch of people were like, no, you're dumb, this is so easy. Well, look what's happening. Like, they did not come here with all of their ducks in a row. Some of their ducks aren't even here yet. Like, it's not good. They really need to streamline this a little bit. It's weird too, because like Switch 2 edition upgrades are listed as a perk for NSO expansion pack, not specifically just Zelda. So there will be more. But if there's going to be more, I ask the question, why not all?
Yeah, I can understand it for the $20 tier ones. I think that makes sense. I think if you're saying, oh, well, we've bundled it with a DLC now, in a perfect world, if I were Doug Bowser or if I was Furukawa, you know, I would likely set the edict that if you have one, you don't bundle DLC with the Switch 2 upgrade. Like, you don't make them together. You don't make them required to be purchased together. You can get the Switch 2 upgrade, and then, hey, as an upsell, like, we've got this new DLC that only works on the Switch 2 edition. You can buy that for $10. But if you have NSO, we will upgrade all your games to Switch 2 editions free of charge. That is a perk of the service now, because that's a huge benefit. Like, that is a massive benefit. I am so excited that my existing subscription that they did not increase the price of, which is surprising to me, that they did not increase the price of, will now also give me access to GameCube, and it will give me Switch 2 editions of some of my games. That's rad. I love that.
A lot of people probably will disagree with me, but I think NSO is a really good deal now.
Yeah, it's certainly to the point where it's hard to deny just how good of a service it is. It is, for me, it has eclipsed Game Pass as being my favorite subscription service in gaming, because I've said this for decades now, but Nintendo has the best back catalog of anyone ever. And they have access to libraries that are top of class. Like there's, Xbox can't offer me Super Nintendo games. Xbox can't offer me Game Boy Advance. Only Nintendo is in a position to do those things. And the fact that now on one service, I can get NES, Super NES, N64, Game Boy Advance, GameCube now. I mean, that is so much of my history with games on one platform that I'm just, I have a hard time arguing against it.
We're getting to the point where, like, we're just missing Wii, DS, 3DS, but once those consoles are there, you basically have Nintendo's entire history on one platform.
Yes, I mean,
That's
and
insane.
there are problems that are inherent to Nintendo's approach with releasing games on this service, but
Yeah.
I mean that's a separate conversation. But the idea that these platforms are accessible at all, and that Nintendo doesn't ratchet up the subscription price every time they add one of these is something I like. I think that to go back to Nintendo Switch 2 editions, though, to fold this all in, Nintendo Switch 2 editions at 10, I think what they should have done is everything's free, and if it has a DLC, then there's a $10 charge. Like, hey, we're going to drop it from 20 to 10 because we're giving you the Switch 2 edition portion of this for free, and the DLC is still $10. I think that's how you should play this. And to be fair, we don't know that that's not what they'll do, but Nintendo is also not talking too much about these things. So
Yeah.
we'll have to wait till Jamboree and Jamboree TV comes out to really find out what Nintendo's strategy is there.
And that doesn't come out, excuse me, that doesn't come out until late July, like 2 weeks after Donkey Kong.
Yeah. So there's still going to be kind of these big question marks hanging over some of the things about the Switch 2. Now, I'm of the mind personally that these are things I don't need to know just yet. Because obviously the two big Switch 2 edition games that we know are coming at launch are free with NSO. We know that much. But they do need to clarify this probably before not too long,
Yeah, I agree. There's probably more Nintendo Switch 2 edition games coming. I imagine Tomodachi Life will have a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. That's a game that I can see using mouse mode very easily. It also looked really sharp in the Direct where we saw it for the first time. So I imagine there's probably some Switch 2 trickery happening in a version of that game.
Well, it was worth noting that they showed Tomodachi Life in the Switch 2 Direct too, in the sizzle reel, I think, at the end. I don't think they said it was a Switch 2 edition, but I'm fairly certain it got some screen time in the Switch 2 Premiere Direct.
Oh, well, there you go. And I doubt Tomodachi Life will be the last one as well. Like, I think we'll see Switch 2 edition games for the next couple years, because they're not letting go of that Switch 1 audience anytime soon.
Right. I mean, Doug Bowser specifically said that they're keeping, that the Switch 1 is the entry point for people who find the price of the Switch 2 too high, which I talked about for a bit in a video. I think he could have worded that a whole lot better.
Doug, I don't know if that one was the right way to say that.
Right.
I get what he's saying, but yeah.
Yeah, I understand the point he was trying to make, and I think there was a much more eloquent way to put it. I just think that it was one of those things where it's if somebody fired a question like that at me, I don't know how much better I would have done, like having to respond to it on my feet.
Yeah. No,
in an email, it probably, that question could have been better. But I think in a live face-to-face situation, there's no way you're giving a good answer to that question.
There's also been a lot of controversy over Welcome Tour, and I wanted to bring this back to the two SKUs that are being offered. I think you should have put Welcome Tour in the Mario Kart bundle.
Yes. The Wii U famously had a higher price SKU that included Nintendo Land, and Nintendo Land was a bigger game than Welcome Tour. Nintendo Land was like a full-on gamey game, and Welcome Tour is certainly a game. Like it's not just some goofy stuff, but it's
when you boil
you're
it
selling
down,
it for $9.
When you boil it down, it's a instruction manual, but also a minigame collection. And I don't think they pushed the minigame collection part of it hard enough. But for a game that's only $10, I don't see why you don't put that in the Mario Kart bundle.
Yeah, I think that a lot of this was probably stoked by fears over economics stuff and people just being worried about the price of the console and trying to make as much as they can in a situation where maybe they do need to offset costs of, I don't know, tariffs. But
yeah,
it's so it's a weird situation because I think in a different economic climate, Nintendo might have packed this in. I think in the one we're in where everything is so uncertain, it wasn't going to happen. Reggie, very surprisingly in a way, kind of threw shade on NOA by tweeting out the story of how he fought for Wii Sports to be packed in to the Wii, like the same day they announced Welcome Tour was paid. And so it's just an interesting look. And I think that it might be a situation where NOA really wanted this and NCL just won this battle this time. Like, hey, because they didn't want Wii Sports to be packed in with the Wii, and it took Reggie fighting tooth and nail for it.
There's two very specific differences about back then and today. One is that Reggie no longer works at Nintendo, and two, Iwata is no longer with us.
Yeah. And those are very important changes. That basically, the entire leadership of Nintendo in their two biggest regions is different than it was.
Yeah.
And that means different decision makers and different decisions. Nintendo's going to learn a lesson here, right? Welcome Tour, I don't suspect is going to sell a whole lot of copies. I'm going to buy it. Because I'm a hardware geek and I love learning more about stuff like this. And there were interesting tidbits about the development of the Switch 2 hardware in there. So I'll pick it up, but I am definitely in the minority on this. I'm running currently a Switch 2 launch survey, and I think Welcome Tour is one of the least popular titles on that list. Behind stuff like Hogwarts Legacy, which I think currently has 0 votes.
I think the best priced thing Nintendo has announced in this entire lineup of stuff is the Switch 2 camera.
Yeah. The Switch 2 camera, $50, by the way, is just a 1080p webcam, but Nintendo has leveraged it in such a way, at least in Jamboree TV. Yes, wide angle webcam, which is important. They've leveraged it in such a way that you can, it does stuff like the Kinect did on the 360, which is just super impressive that they did that with just a straight up plain old USB-C webcam.
Talking about the webcam has made me think about another aspect of this that maybe isn't so great. You have Mario Party, Jamboree, plus Jamboree TV, where most of the features in Jamboree TV require the camera. There's some mouse stuff and some microphone stuff, but they pushed the camera stuff pretty hard. Why doesn't the physical version of the game just come with it?
It's one of those things again where I can see the rationale here, right? Like you're talking about a $70 game with an $80. Is it $80?
It will be $80.
Yes, because it includes the DLC. So, yeah. Which, to be fair, again, makes sense. But you're talking about an $80 game and a $50 camera. So realistically, bundle wise, right? Because usually they discount stuff when they bundle it. You're probably talking about something that would retail for $119.99. And you could see that as paying $60 for the game and $60 for the camera, but then you're overpaying for the camera and underpaying for the game, right? So you would be essentially getting $5 off of each. But I think Nintendo has to be aware to some degree of the optics of the Switch 2 launching with very expensive games across the board, right? Mm-hmm. When you go into a Target, right? And if you've never been into a Target, maybe you're not from the US and you're listening to this. In the US, most of our retail stores have glass cases, and all the games are lined up in these glass cases with the shelf tags in front with the price. So when you go to look for a game, if you're not someone, again, like us, who knows all this stuff before you walk in the store, you just look at all those tags lined up and you're like $70, $70, $80, $90. You know, it's scary, right? And so I think the last thing you want is to put another tag on that shelf that's like $119. Because then you know what happens? People will just take a picture and be like, damn, Switch 2 games are expensive. And that post will circulate all over the internet. And that'll be the reputation that the console earns, is that everything is $100 on this console. And so I think Nintendo wants to avoid that imagery, right? They want to, because when you think about the camera, Nintendo's like, I just said it myself without thinking. I was like, it's just $50. But, you know, yeah, but then you pick up the $90 game to go with it, and now you're talking about $140, right? So I think that there's something to that, right? Like, I want to play Jamboree. You and I had loads of fun playing Jamboree TV on the camera, and I remember just being delighted at how well it worked. And I already own Jamboree, so for me, it's not going to be a $90 pickup. And I think this is kind of what Nintendo is angling for with these Switch 2 editions. They're hoping that you bought this game on the Switch. I don't think they're necessarily looking for people who are brand new to it. I think they're looking for people who already have it. And they're saying, you know, hey, we've got upgrades for this game. If you still are really into Jamboree, you can go get Jamboree TV, and you need to get the webcam. I will be picking up the webcam day one because game chat just looks really interesting to me. I'm really excited to try it.
I want the camera as well. I also wouldn't be upset if they just snuck an upgrade code in the box and didn't tell anyone that it was in there.
Yeah, like, honestly, if they were like, hey, if you buy the camera in the first couple months or you buy it before Jamboree TV comes out, we'll send you a code for Jamboree TV. You know, I could see
retailers doing that.
Yeah. Maybe they even say, hey, we're only going to do this with the Nintendo camera. Like if you get the Hori Piranha Plant camera, you're out of luck.
You should if you buy the anyway,
Nintendo branded camera. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's really pretty, but it's 480p versus 1080p. Like you should get at least the Nintendo camera. And to be fair, one of the coolest things about this whole camera setup is that Nintendo has said you can just plug in any old USB-C webcam. If you've got one, you could just plug that in and use that, which I think is a very un-Nintendo and very pro-consumer move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. That's super cool. But the Nintendo Switch 2 camera itself is very appealing because it is 1080p. It's wide angle, like it's on a stand that would, you know, I have a sound bar on my very big sound bar on my my entertainment center, and I looked, and the camera will be just tall enough to poke over the back of it. Nice. So like the for as minimalist as it is, it's actually a really well designed piece of hardware from what we've seen. So I'm happy with it from that perspective. Yeah, I'll happily pick one up. It's just, you got this whole game thing here where the camera is a requirement, and that just kind of bugs me. Like with We Speak, they bundled Animal Crossing City Folk. With Mario Party 6 and 7, they bundled the microphone in the box. So this is an instance where they're not doing that. That's I don't know, it's just a little concerning. I know the camera is like a system-wide feature, so I see it from that perspective. Like it's not just for Mario Party, it's for the whole console, and that's cool. But it's hard to sell a DLC for an existing game that requires the camera and not just give you the camera with it.
I agree with you. I think, you know, we live in a record bad economy right now.
It's pretty bad.
And that's why we're not seeing these things, because honestly, I would have expected Nintendo, because when you look at the Direct, when you look at the tagline, which is like what, anytime, anywhere, or something like that, with anyone or something, it's very clear that Nintendo is very proud of game chat, and that they're very interested in pushing that as like the core marquee feature of the Switch 2, which is amazing because everything else the Switch 2 does is very impressive. I would honestly say game chat is like, I understand why they're pushing it, because for non-technical people, game chat is going to be like the, oh, wow, you know, but I think in a different economy where the global economy was a bit more stable and certain, the camera would have been in the Switch 2 console box. I don't think that I think that years from now, we'll probably learn that Nintendo wanted to put the camera in the box, had planned to, and then because of the way the world went, just couldn't, because it would have pushed the price of the console too high. And so they were like, I guarantee you that there is a scenario in which Nintendo was looking at it and eyeing up options, and someone somewhere was like, it has to be lower than $500 unless we include a game. And they're like, we can't get the camera and a game in the box for less than 500. And so they cut the camera because they knew that they'd sell way more bundles that had Mario Kart than bundles with no game but a webcam.
And that's objectively the right choice in that instance. Because, it's Mario Kart. The people are going to go out and buy it. So
I would not be surprised if at launch we saw Switch 2 boxes that didn't have Mario Kart on shelves. Like because people are not, people are like, oh, do you have the Mario Kart bundle? No, then I'll wait. And they'll just leave. I think that there's a scenario in which you could walk into a Target, and if you were just desperate to get a Switch 2, you could pick up one that didn't have Mario Kart and then just buy Mario Kart for $80.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the pre-order situation here in the US and also in Canada has been just outright
murky.
Put on hold.
It's weird.
I signed up to pre-order through Nintendo. We don't need to talk about this very much, but just the whole thing they set up there to prevent scalping. Super love that. Very cool that that's there. Being invited to pre-order. PlayStation did a similar thing with PS5, if I'm not mistaken.
They did. It wasn't nearly as good. I don't think they had any playtime requirements or anything like that. You just had to have a PSN account. You didn't even have to have PS Plus.
The only thing about the pre-order thing I don't like is that members of a family group don't qualify. Only the person paying for it does.
Yeah, that feels a bit short-sighted. On one hand, I get it, because if your main aim is to stop scalpers, right? What are the odds that somebody who programmed a scalping bot, is willing to pay for an NSO family subscription and then add 5 more bots, that they could run,
right?
Because you're not going to fully eliminate bots, but you are going to severely curtail them with this approach, because there is an overlap of people who love Nintendo and have a valid account and who also are scalpers, but this is going to limit them to being able to get one console to hawk on eBay as opposed to 50,
We've also already seen that Nintendo fans have been going after scalpers in full force and getting their listings taken off of eBay. So that's fun.
Sony fans did the same thing with the 30th anniversary PS5, which I was very proud of them for. So yeah, I think Nintendo has, at least with this portion of it, and I don't begrudge Nintendo of America or Nintendo of Canada taking a pause on pre-orders because everything here is so crazy.
Oh yeah.
I don't begrudge that at all. May 8th is when pre-orders are supposed to start for Nintendo, and I kind of suspect that they're just going to push all pre-orders to May 8th. Like, hey, we already had this pin in the calendar for our stuff, and we meant to do ours later, but we needed to reevaluate the price. I'm hopeful that we're going to stay at $449. I did a whole video on that. You should go watch it if you're interested to find out my reasons why. But at this point, I think I feel kind of bad for Nintendo. These are plans that take years to put in place, and it takes, one stroke of a pen to really complicate things. And that's exactly what has happened.
We know they tried to plan ahead. Like, they moved a ton of production to Vietnam to avoid the tariffs on China. And I've seen some speculation from some folks that despite them saying the tariffs had nothing to do with the pricing, they probably do.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Nintendo clearly did some things here to try to mitigate pricing. So you can look at the Switch 2 Japanese language edition, which is a first. It's the first time Nintendo has region locked a console specifically for financial reasons. So in Japan, if you're unaware, there is a Switch 2 Japanese language edition is what they call it. And then there's a Switch 2 multi-language edition. These are SKUs of the Switch that only exist in Japan. And the Switch 2 Japanese language edition is significantly cheaper than any other model of Switch 2. It comes in at about $330. And then
such a good price.
Yeah. But the multi-language edition, which supports our accounts, right? That one comes in closer to the $450 retail price. So Nintendo definitely built something in here because they're basically saying like, oh, well, we could sell you a Switch for $300, but we're doing this in Japan because the yen is weaker and we're not going to get tariffs in Japan. But the key is they locked it down to where you can only use Japanese language games and Japanese Nintendo accounts with it. So you couldn't even like sign in as yourself, which means it'll be one of those things that's probably like a curio that, oh God, our kids will do YouTube videos about in 20 years.
Oh no, Ella's going to be a YouTuber.
She's on her way.
It's happening. Yeah, so no, I agree. Like that was the clearest indicator that this was all related. So like I don't envy the position that they've been put in, but at the end of the day, I'm still a consumer, and I'm the person that gets affected the most.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I don't, I don't know how you navigate around this. My hope is that we just end up at the $449 price. The one that Nintendo announced, because I think people already got used to it, and if it goes higher than that, I think it's going to be difficult. You're gonna restart the cycle of outrage, and it feels like it, at least for the moment, people have accepted that this is what it is. And I think that there will be at least a certain level of appreciation if Nintendo says, hey, yeah, our price is higher, but we're going to keep yours the same.
Nintendo would be stupid not to eat the cost.
It would be a bad move for them at this point, yeah. Especially now that we know the tariffs on Vietnam have been mostly lifted. They're at 10% now versus, 45 or something that they were a little while ago?
Yeah, I think Nintendo could probably afford to eat the cost anyway, to be honest. But, they sold Wii U at a loss, didn't they?
For a period. Wii U was sold at a loss. And to be fair, we don't know that Switch 2 isn't being sold at a loss. It'll take a tear down and a lot of stuff before we're able to figure that out. It could be that even at $449 here in the States, that represents a small loss for Nintendo. Of course, we're also assuming all of this based on every single Switch 2 unit being shipped into the US from Vietnam, which, to be fair, I do think is going to be the case. But we do have to realistically also measure that if any Switch 2 units come from China, those are subject to like 145%. And that is bad. That is, I did the napkin math. If you took a $450 Switch and you imposed, at the time it was 125% tariff, you're talking about $1,000. You're talking about $1,000 console at those prices. And obviously Nintendo, there is a certain amount that Nintendo can eat, but I don't think they could eat the entire cost of the console and then some.
You don't sell the console at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the reason that all Switch 1 or Switch 2 units coming into the US will come through Vietnam.
It's frustrating as a citizen of the country as well as a Nintendo fan to want to be excited about all this stuff, and I am, but to have this big looming thing behind me with the whole thing. So it's frustrating, it's sad, but we have that 90-day pause so on tariffs, so we might see some change or maybe no change. I just hope that pre-orders come back. They're at the price they already announced and not any higher, and that I can just get my console and go play and cry in the corner.
Yeah, at this point, at whatever price it comes in at, I'll be excited to see it. I know that this is a day one purchase for me. The price, barring something absolutely crazy, is not my main concern. It's really just being able to get the hardware, get it on day one. See, because there's also the very real possibility that demand will far outstrip supply. I have not seen this level of excitement for a Nintendo console. Possibly since the N64, coming hot off the heels of the Super Nintendo. Everyone I knew wanted an N64. Everyone was super excited. The Wii, I think, generated a fair amount of excitement. I don't know.
Buy one for a long time.
Yeah, I was a kid back when the N64 came out, so maybe I'm equating a bit of my own hype with overall sentiment. But the Wii was certainly probably the most constrained supply situation I've ever seen Nintendo in, and so I could see that happening with Switch too, just because when you go from a console that sells 150 million plus units to the next thing, and the next thing is objectively in every way better, you're going to have a lot of people that want to get it really early. And so I could see a situation in which it's like PS2 levels of shortage, right? Like just you can't find this thing in stores, especially just with imports having to be what they are, right? Nintendo is likely going to have to further increase production in Vietnam, which will take a while to do. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
There's also probably a decent supply of Switch 2s on land already, just somewhere.
Yeah. Famaboards has been tracking Nintendo shipments in a way that I can only describe as obsessive. And there's been enough data to show that Switch 2 units have been coming into the US for months and months now. So there has to be plenty of them ready to go for launch right now. It's just a matter of how many can Nintendo get into the country during this 90-day window.
Right. That all remains to be seen. I'm hopeful it's not too long before we hear something. It's just everything's so volatile. Things have been changing day to day. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're right and that just wait until May 8th across the board for US and Canada. Which is fine. It's not like waiting to pre-order is like, it doesn't affect waiting for the console, because the console's still, at least at this point, still coming out on June 5th. But there's always that anxiety as a Nintendo fan, hoping that you can secure a unit.
Yeah, I will not feel easy on this one until I have a paid for pre-order, or at least I would say my ideal scenario is a confirmation from Nintendo that I've got a pre-order locked in. But if I'm able to go down to my local Best Buy, GameStop, whatever, and have a prepaid pre-order for the console, knowing that I can pick it up at midnight on the 5th, then that'll be when I really feel like, okay, I'm locked in. Everything's good to go. Because obviously stores know how many they're going to get. That's how many they take pre-orders for. That'll be when I really feel like things are solidly in place. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you for joining us for this feature length, The Week in Nintendo. We haven't gotten to chat with y'all for a while, so I figured we'd just keep going. So yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I know a lot of you in our community have gotten to play Switch 2 at this point, so I'm curious what you all think. So let us know in the comments below. Leave us a rating on podcast services. 5 stars goes a long way, so we thank you if you do that. And we thank you just for being here. But Steve, there are more ways you can interact with GVG. Tell the fine folks how they can do that.
That's right. You can join our Winner's Circle, which gives you early access to each and every episode of The Week in Nintendo, except for this one, over at patreon.com/gvgaming. $1 gets you into our Discord, $5 gets you into our Winner's Circle, $10 gets your name in the credits of every single video we make. So there are a lot of ways to interact, get involved, and show your support. We'd appreciate it if you just take a look. Again, that's patreon.com/gvgaming.
Well, that's going to do it for us. Make sure to come back next week for our next episode of The Week in Nintendo. Hopefully we have some more positive news on the pre-order front to talk about, and whatever else Nintendo's hiding. They've got Nintendo Today now, so the news could drop tomorrow about whatever. We'll find out. But thanks for listening. Keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.
Bye.